It's really the key theme, if you like, or one of the key themes. It's the key theme that brings many people into mindfulness training. At least it's often a starting point. How do I manage? How do I live well with this that's troubling me? Or in fact, sometimes it's simpler than that. It's like, I want this to stop troubling me. I want to get out of here. I want to not experience this, whatever this is, whether this is pain, physical pain, emotional pain, stress, dullness, uncertainty, boredom, restlessness, tension, whatever it is. My life, or my life as it is. All of these kind of entry points. There are people, by the way, who come to meditation practice because they're just kind of like looking for something to do. And there are some people who come to meditation practice because they're searching for the meaning of life, or maybe the meaning in life. But I would say that probably, at least most of the people who come to an 8-week mindfulness course are coming with something that they want healed. I was certainly no exception to that, although it opened up some of the other stuff. And in some ways, the biggest disappointment is learning that taking a mindfulness course isn't going to rid you of any of this stuff. It's kind of like, it's a sort of a big disappointment. But in that big disappointment, actually, the recognition of that big disappointment is the start of the good news, because once we can accept that a mindfulness practice isn't going to get rid of all of those things we'd rather be rid of, then we can start working. Because it turns out that the key driver of the suffering and the stress that we experience with our pain, whatever that pain is, or pains, many of us have multiple sources. Once we let go of trying to get rid of it, and we accept that it's a part of life, then a load is dropped. A load of tension is paradoxically dropped at that point. We learned that the desire to be rid of what we don't like and the desire to get more of what we would like is so deeply wired within us, and at times highly effective. Like it wouldn't, this wouldn't have evolved as a key human trait if it didn't sometimes work. So it works really well. I mean, you imagine a prey, an animal of prey or a bird of prey who didn't have the ability to run from difficulty, be gone very quickly, or a person who didn't flinch from a hot stove. Again, they wouldn't last very long. So the experiences of pain, fear, anger, tension, anxiety, all serve significant purposes for us. They keep us here. They keep us alive, and from that historical perspective, those of our ancestors who were able to do this well were more likely to be around longer and therefore to pass on their genes. So they're vital survival qualities. The problem is only that we see the hurt that they cause as a problem in itself. So, rather than seeing this as a signal, a message that we can take on board and trust, actually, often, not always, because there are distortions, but the basic message can be felt and learnt from. But it's like it's a sort of glitch in the system where the part of us that wants to get rid sees the experience or feels the experience as unpleasant and wants to get rid of that. So suddenly we've got stress as a problem or pain as a problem. When that happens, and we try to get rid of them, and then discover that actually these kind of inner messages, these internal signals, are not like the predator from outside that we can run from, because wherever we go, there we are. We take these experiences with us. Then we just kind of get a feedback loop going round and round and round, and we've got pain on top of pain on top of pain on top of pain. So while we might often come to something like meditation with, oh, this one will work. I've tried I'm not going to name them, this cure and that cure and this cure and that cure. And now meditation is the next one. At least this is how I was. Don't know about any of you guys. I hope this will be the one. And in a way, it did turn out to be the one, but in completely the opposite way from what I expected, because it taught me how to actually stop seeking those kind of solutions, and actually that getting up close and personal with difficulty is the last thing that I wanted to do, but it was absolutely what was happening already. It's just that I was resisting it. Turned out to be just what was needed. The disappointment is that meditation doesn't get rid of what we want it to get rid of. But from that point, from that disappointment, comes the possibility of a realistic and skillful relationship to the inevitable downs of a human life, and of course the ups. But just park in that one for a moment, because we don't tend to see those ones as a problem. So it's an adaptive trait of resistance, escape, denial, in some way kind of separating ourselves from what we don't want. But that separation itself, at some point when it comes to certain kinds of difficulties, chronic ones, things that we can't change, unimagined ones as well, kind of like because one of the great benefits and drawbacks of a human mind is that we can actually project ourselves into the future and remember the past. So we can actually create in our minds stresses and remember stresses that are actually long gone and regenerate them in the present moment. So all those kinds of pains can't be got rid of with what we might loosely call aversion, escape, fight sometimes as well, in some sense trying to either kind of exterminate or avoid. So the approach in mindfulness, and this is kind of gently introduced, is the possibility that we can begin to move towards what scares us. Begin to move towards what pains us, and actually begin to make it a friend. Not that we have to like it, we don't have to kind of pretend that, oh yeah, fantastic, I'm in real agony here. It's more a sense of, oh yes, this is what's going on, and given that the present moment is already here and therefore I can't change what it is, maybe it can be changed by my relationship to it. So we shift the way of meeting it, and that moving towards the friendliness that we practice in mindfulness training is you can't be aversive and friendly at the same time. So by coming towards, the aversion is no longer there, and we might sort of flim flam between them, but there's this kind of dance of gradually coming towards and holding our experience with a sense of acceptance. Just the present moment doesn't mean kind of we accept that nothing's ever going to get better, but just accepting the present moment that's already arisen, and that gives us the ground for us to be able to act wisely. But what we try and do often is we think we're acting wisely by acting quickly. And often, when it's the predator, yes, acting quickly is acting wisely. But when it's something inside of us, acting quickly often just means reacting to something in a habitual way, which is not actually appropriate for the situation itself, the inner or chronic or unavoidable difficulty. So another kind of sort of myth to clear up is that if the difficulty can be solved, solve it. Yeah, if there's something that you can do to make, if you've got your hand on the hot stove, take it off. If action is what's needed, take action. This is for when that may not be the most skillful approach, and also in discerning what might be the most skillful approach, because sometimes it may not be clear what's needed, and in which case the pause gives us the opportunity to discern what the situation might need, and to experiment consciously rather than react automatically. And what we discover is that if we can practice this over and over, this can begin to shift the course of our relationship to life, and from that, because the future is a result of how we meet the present, the future starts to have some different potential to it. So when it becomes the present, it's maybe it's changed, but not by our trying to change it, but by our having met previous situations skillfully. Sometimes situations just change. So, I mean, a kind of really obvious one, at least for those people who are based in, the United Kingdom at the moment, is just noticing how, 12 months ago, Brexit was kind of like everywhere. And it's still happening, of course, but it's kind of like the attention that's given to it is completely different now, because we've got something else that's come up that's completely blown that out of the water, at least as a news story. So, interesting just to observe kind of like when attention is taken away from something and or maybe goes towards something else. Well, how does that shift the situation? So sometimes things change in ways that we can't predict. And problems can either dissolve or change in their seeming importance. So sometimes all that's needed is to wait with a difficulty, to actually be patient. This is why people going to the doctors are called patients, because actually most of what's needed is waiting rather than acting. Sometimes you need really quick action, but sort of much of healing is the process of the human body being held and looked after as well as possible while it heals itself. You have a wound, yes, you can dress it and clean it, but ultimately the healing has to happen in its own time. So it's creating the conditions for that healing to take place, kind of a holding space for it. Have you seen the T-shirt that says, got a problem? Can you do something about it? Don't worry. You can't do something about it? Don't worry. It's kind of like, worrying is almost never productive. because it doesn't serve the purpose. And it doesn't mean that sometimes thinking can't be helpful, kind of skillfully directed thinking, but worrying tends to be kind of washing machine mind going round and round and round and actually not getting anywhere. So if we can choose our relationship with what's coming up in the present moment by directing our attention skillfully, then we've got more freedom to relate. And you might be familiar with one of Viktor Frankl's best known quotes. He said, all of our freedoms can be taken from us except the last one, and that's the ability to choose our attitude in the face of a situation. Now, I would sort of tweak that slightly, because we only have the ability to choose our attitude if we are lucky enough to have inherited that skill or we've practiced it. So mindfulness training is a way of cultivating our ability to choose our attitude and choose our place of attention in the face of a situation. So we're going to have a play with working with difficulty practice. I just want to say that it's really important that you take care of yourself in the midst of this. So there are some difficulties, including those inside of us, that in the short term, at least, it can be actually more skillful to take our attention away from. So particularly when we're practicing working with difficulty, it helps to choose something. And we're going to just use our imaginations to bring something to mind, to choose something that's not overwhelming. Choose something that's kind of, if there was a sort of 1 to 10 scale of difficulty, is sort of a 3 or a 4. Something that, that's kind of a nuisance, an irritation, rather than choosing to work with the kind of the most terrible thing that's happening right now in the world. And also to know that if we do feel like it's too much to move towards, then it can be skillful to move away, or to take a break from the practice, or indeed to ground ourselves, is to drop attention into the body and feel ourselves anchored. So please know that gentleness is a really important part of this, and to know that you don't have to do anything that I'm suggesting if your body says, this isn't right for me at the moment, or your mind says, this isn't right for me at the moment. Please look after yourself. So let's drop into a practice.